Those of you who are here, so let's begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. وصلى الله على مولانا حبيب الله العالمين أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على القوم الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله to everyone here in the book club. I'm going for the names now and I see a lot of familiar names, alhamdulillah, from before. And for those of you who are not here live but are following later, we also send salam to you as well, obviously, but special salam to those who are here, naturally. And inshallah, all of you are doing well. Inshallah, you guys are keeping healthy and safe. Today's a very good day, alhamdulillah. Every day is a good day, but today is a super good day. Because of the book club, obviously, and because this is the 5th session that we have reached, alhamdulillah, which means that we are halfway. We are halfway through this book club. It was initially said for 10 weeks, and inshallah it will conclude in 5 weeks from now. So we have come to the midway point, after which we have agreed upon what our mission is. We understand the book of Nahjal Balagha. I think, and maybe you guys can add this in your points, I think we're getting to know a bit more about how Imam Ali alayhi salam thinks and speaks and looks at the world, especially in the topics which keep coming up and the way that he expresses himself. It's as if we are enjoying a nice snapshot into what it would have been like to be listening to the Imam regularly, especially his sermons, because he issued these sermons and someone heard and wrote them down, but also his letters we're looking at, where we are reading the words that he wrote. And those short sayings which are coming up here and there are useful because there's a quality of Nahjal Balagha where a short saying will kind of stick in your head. Maybe there's one which is more than others, but there's one which, stays. And then you learn more about it in its application over time. So that's why it's good to gather as much provision as you can, inshallah. That being said, let's continue our topic of Nahjal Balagha, which is on moral decision making. Now, alhamdulillah, we've reached a point now in which we know our topic, which is moral decision making. And we know our resource of decision making. We know the unit of decision making, which is from which all of our decisions emanate from, and which is the accountable part of us for our moral decisions, and that is the heart. So if you recall last week, it actually feels like longer, but last week we looked at the role of the Holy Prophet being the doctor of hearts or the healer of hearts. He's tabib dawaran bit-tibb. It was a very beautiful metaphor. And what we concluded was that if we find ourselves in difficulty or heartbreak or confusion of what is the right or wrong thing to do, we have allies and support around us to help us in guiding that internal voice which helps us in our day-to-day struggles that others might not know. But we have resources available to us which are external to us, which help awaken the internal. This is why today's sermon, we're looking at Sermon 130, in which Imam Ali alayhi salam is speaking about, and in fact to Abu Dharr, one of his companions. Abu Dharr, who is also a great companion of the Holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did this. He worked on himself and he situated himself near people from whom he would obtain positive energy for his own growth. And that's why we see in this sermon we're going to look at, and also in the lives of many of the companions of the Imams, they have reached a certain level and they become images of what the Imam wants us to be like. That's why sometimes we go to Imam Hussein through his ashab. We really study the companions of Abu Abdullah, or we're really interested in how did Abu Dharr live, how did Ammar live, how did Miqdad live, what about Qambar, what about Malik al-Ashtar? We want to know about these people because we're not ma'soom, and neither are they. And yet they lived in such a way that the Imams praise them and compliment them. And sometimes in one sermon, Imam says, Aina akhwan, where are my brothers? Aina Ammar, Aina Malik. Like he actually says, where are my brothers? That's the potential we could have. But we need to work on ourselves as individuals to reach that level. So in today's discussion, we're going to have a look at Sermon 130 and look at the idea of selling yourself to Allah and making a choice, okay? And leaving behind a legacy. All these ideas about what to do if you're in a difficult situation, we've got to make a difficult choice between two things. What kind of legacy am I going to leave behind? All these issues actually come from this sermon, and I'm going to mention other sermons in connection to it to help flesh out these ideas a bit more. So just to get everyone ready, inshallah, sermon 130, please have it open in front of you if you are following along with the text. If you have the English or the Arabic, it's the one which begins with Ya Abu Dharr. So if you're using a different copy, make sure it's this one in which the Imam speaks to Abu Dharr. Did anyone have any issues in accessing or in getting the sermon, or any questions about like the logistics of it or anything like that? We've all got it in front of us. Any problems at the moment? Okay, so the sermon obviously has a very good chain. Another one from Kulaini and obviously Yaqubi as well, which means that different schools of thought can appreciate it. Now then, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go through this sermon. Kauthar, Sister Kauthar saying a sermon 129 in some copies. Thank you so much, Sister Kauthar. So if anyone can't find it, perhaps it is one before or one after, as we do have in some cases. Thank you. Muhammad, if you're listening, if you could add, or anyone could add the link to the sermon, the online one, just so anyone who's not got it can access it. But otherwise, thank you, Sister Kauthar. You can be in different numbers as well. Ya Allah, okay. I'm first going to go through the sermon just to get us up to speed. Thank you, Sister Alia. I'm going to get us up to speed so we can go through the sermon and see what does Imam actually say. Then I'll pause and I'll ask you about your reflections, and then I'll try and unpack some of the themes from it. In any case, let us begin, inshallah. Sermon 130. The Imam begins. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya Abu Dharr. O Abu Dharr. Imam is saying this to Abu Dharr while he is being exiled to Al-Rabda and to Medina from where they are living together in Kufa, because Abu Dharr has been exiled for his continuous representing the truth and his constant attacks to Banu Umayyah, whether it's Muawiyah or Marwan or Uthman, whoever. Abu Dharr is a staunch speaker of truth, and now he's been exiled. He's told to leave the land. And he's been told by Muawiyah that you are to leave on a camel with no saddle as a punishment. Many people wouldn't actually survive that kind of journey, but Abu Dharr, of course, is very resolute. He's being punished for not compromising on the truth. And Muawiyah says, no one is allowed to see you off as you leave. But Imam Ali went to see him. With Imam Hassan, with Imam Hussein, they went to the edge of the town and they bid farewell and watched him ride away. This is the Imam speaking to his dear companion while he's leaving him. Ya Abu Dharr, innaka ghadibta Allah. You showed anger for Allah. Your anger was Allah's anger. Farju man ghadibta lahu. Therefore, have hope in that anger, or the one for whom you became angry. Innal qawma khafuka ala dunyahim. The people were afraid of you. They had khawf of you because of how you looked at the dunya. وَخِفْتَهُمْ عَلَى دِينِكَ. And you feared them for how they thought of their deen, of their faith. So they feared you for how you looked at dunya. You feared for how they looked at this deen. وَخِفْتَهُمْ عَلى دِينِكَ. فَاتْرُكْ فِي أَيْدِيهِمْ مَا خَافُوكَ عَلَيْهِ. And so, leave them to what they are afraid of, which they don't want. And take with you what you want to keep with you. وَاحْرُبْ مِنْهُمْ بِمَا خِفْتَهُمْ عَلَيْهِ. So keep with you the thing which they were afraid of. And leave to them what they are afraid of. فَمَا أَحْوَجَهُمْ إِلَى مَا مَنَعْتُهُمْ وَأَغْنَاكَ عَمَّا مَنَعُوكَ. Because they are so needy, they are so muhtaj for the thing that you have. And they are so heedless for the thing which they were trying to deny you. They don't realize the thing which they were denying you, and they are so in need of it at the same time. فَسَتَعْلُمْ مِنَ الرَّابِحُ غَدًا. Soon you will know, Ya Abu Dharr, what is coming tomorrow. وَالْأَكْثَرُ حَسَّدًا وَلَوْ أَنَّ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِينَ كَانَتَا عَلَى عَبْدَ رَتْقًا ثُمَّ تَقَلَّى لَجَعَلَ اللَّهُ لَهُ مِنْهُمْ مَخْرَجًا. You will know soon which thing was more worth having envy of, having of hasad of, the thing which you feared or the thing which they feared. And even if the ardh and the samawat were to be close to someone, the samawat wal ard were closed. كانت على عبد رتقا ثم تقى. But then they had taqwa, the very thing which you have, Abu Dharr. Then Allah Azza wa Jal would open them up to them. If only they had opened up to Allah. لا يؤنسنك إلا الحق ولا يوحشنك إلا الباطل. Only rightfulness, haqq, should be attractive to you, and only batil should be detestable in your eyes or unattractive in your eyes. إلى الباطل. فلو قبلت دنياهم. And if you accept this dunya, this world, لأحبوك, they would have loved you, Abu Dharr. ولو قرضت منها الأمنوك. And if you had shared with what they had wanted you to share them with, لأمنوك, they would have accepted you as their own. Okay, and that's the end of this part of the sermon that we have in this record of Nahjal Balagha. So it is short, but it contains some very amazing recognition from one person to another. In this case, it's Imam Ali recognizing Abu Dharr. Ya Abu Dharr, your anger's God's anger. I see the anger which you have in you, that burns in you for truth and for my walad. I see all of it. And the people are afraid of you for how you look at dunya. And you are afraid at how they look at deen. You know, when they look at you and how you are not prepared to compromise on the truth and you are so steadfast, they are scared of you. And when you see them and how they approach this religion and how light they are, and in the exact case of this sermon, some narrators say it's because they were very corrupt in their wealth and in their money. And Abu Dharr would frequently say, for example, Banu Umayyah, if there were 30 of them, they would take over this whole religion and use it as a tool for wealth. He would speak openly about how they were corrupting the public treasury in front of him. And he was afraid for how they were using this religion. But as the Imam alayhi salam says to them, the thing which you have, which they're scared of, they need it, if only they knew. And the thing which they're denying you, the very same thing which you have, which is this love for this world and this detachment from the materialism, they are in need of it, and they are so heedless of what they're denying. So he says, Abu Dharr, soon you will know, as he's riding away, you will know on the day of judgment, ma hasadan, which of these two things is more worth being envious of, love of this world or hatred of this world? Because like he ends, only Allah should seem attractive to your eyes, and only disobeying Allah and following this world and its daily pleasures should seem detestable in your eyes, because in between them, if the believer truly wants God, he'll open up the heavens and the earth for you. So in Imam Ali's eyes, when he looks at Abu Dharr, he doesn't see what the others see. When others look at Abu Dharr, they see a man who is being exiled from the capital by the leader of the time. He's on this camel and he's leaving disgraced. He was one of the highest companions with the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet once said that Abu Dharr is to me like Isa ibn Maryam is to his qawm in terms of taqwa. In another narration, Abu Dharr, the Prophet says that, and Shaykh Radi mentions this, that nowhere and nothing under, no one under the sky and no one on the earth is as truthful as Abu Dharr. That's the praise he has. And now he's being discarded and he's being exiled. When Imam Ali sees him, he sees someone whom if he asked Allah, Allah would give him everything from the heavens and the earth. Because Abu Dharr has done something. He has recognized something in his life. And whatever he's done, it has made him successful in the eyes of the Imam. This leads us to a very interesting inquiry, which is, what did Abu Dharr do that allowed him to reach this maqam? Because if we look at things objectively, he's in a very difficult situation. But something about how he viewed this dunya and how he viewed Iman is part of his success. Now, the example given, like I mentioned, was that of money and materialism. Abu Dharr did not like the idea that I must be attached to this dunya, or that I must live for the pleasures of this world. He was very much against this. And he would frequently recite this verse of Quran from Surah Tawbah, verses 34 to 35. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu inna kathiran min al-ahbari wal-ruhbani. Indeed, there are rabbis and monks who are doing what? الرهباني اللي يأكلون أموال الناس الباطل ويصدون عن سبيل الله. They are usurping the wealth of the people wrongfully, and they are stopping others from accessing Sabilillah. Who are these people? rabbis and priests. يعني the example is ulama, scholars, are stopping people from reaching God by usurping their wealth. والذين والذين يكنزون الذهب والفضة ولا ينفقونها في سبيل الله فبشرهم بعذاب أليم. And give good news, bashar, tell them that there's good news, but there's also a painful torment for those people who hoard the gold and silver of others and don't spend it for Allah. Abu Dharr would read this part of the verse when he would see Banu Umayyah, reminding them of the Quran, criticizing those scholars who would take wealth. And he'd keep reading, يوم يهمى عليها في نار جهنم فتكوى بها جباههم وجنوحهم وظهورهم. This day will come when all of their treasures will be heated up in this fire, and their foreheads and sides will be branded by them. وَهَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُهُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ. And they'll be told to them, this is the treasure which you hoarded for yourself. فَذُوقُوا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْنِزُونَ. So now, taste what you hoarded. You spent this whole world gathering wealth. Keep it now. What does it do for you? Abu Dharr saw this around him, and he saw wealth being gathered in front of him, taken from the Muslims and kept for himself. Imam Ali is the same Imam who, when he's in Khilafah, he acts completely different to how those acted before him, to the extent where he actually goes to the very lands which were usurped before him by Banu Umayyah just for the sake of keeping it in their families. And he would return it back to them. And he said once that even if the money from this land had been taken for the purpose of purchasing slaves and then slaves dispersed, I would gather all of them and free them for the sake of this money which was usurped. Because in this dunya, we don't believe in doing such deeds that attach you to this world. Abu Dharr saw this and did not want his heart to be attached to dunya. As a result, he died. He died alone, hungry, starving. If anyone asks me a question later about how he died, I can go through it in detail. The sad story of how it was, just to reflect this point. I just need an inkling from a chat or person and I'll go straight into it. But I want to move on and say this last point and then ask you all a question. This point is, Abu Dharr has clearly, focusing on his heart, which is our topic for moral decision making, he's done something to his heart where it's not swayed by selling itself for people. He did not feel this world as worthy of lowering himself to give himself to people and even quiet or even stop or not criticize money. Money didn't do anything for him. Neither did fame or prestige, or it turned out living in his home or having, that position. He didn't need any of it. He had something else, and the Imam Ali recognizes that. What I would like to ask all of you, and I'll pause there, inshallah, and going through, because that is the actual sermon. So now you know the sermon and you can reflect on it before we unpack it. Here's a question to all of you. When you're listening to how Abu Dharr was and going through this sermon, what do you think of him? What kind of person is Abu Dharr in your eyes? And I'm not saying, oh, what's Imam Ali Islam saying? Us as people, when we read about someone like this and the way he was, the way he behaved, can anyone visualize what he was like? Who can has a reflection on what kind of person they think Abu Dharr was based on this or your knowledge? Someone has written to me in a private chat, savage mentality. Yes, Abu Dharr is actually famous for this. That his whole there's an entire a method named after Abu Dharr, which is the we don't need taqiyya approach. Some people believe that Abu Dharr would not be quiet. And that's an example for us now. Some people say that we need to stand by the truth no matter what happens to us. So yes, to the dear brother who wrote that privately, savage mentality. Brother Pedro, assalamu alaikum. What do you see when you look at Abu Dharr?
Assalamu alaikum. I think he manifests a true definition of detachment from this world for the sake of truth. Just a complete detachment. It's interesting that you can actually see he's fighting for worthy matters, but not as a goal, but as a means to establish justice.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, we can see how someone who is purely detached from this world, even for his own comfort, his own life, is I think we can see he's a good definition of a true moment who lives a social life and strives for establishing justice, which is, this justice is defined in this world. You strive with, but at the same time, he's completely detached from this world. So that's how I see Abu Zar. Thank you.
Definitely. I agree with you, my dear brother. He's a template for detachment. He shows what it actually looks like. All these abstract talk about abstaining and not living for dunya. Here's an example of someone who was prepared to demonstrate the extent that it can take and cost from you if you reach that higher level of detachment. So I agree with you, my dear brother. Somebody has written Ali for sure is complete yaqeen without a doubt. He had reached that level of yaqeen for sure. And our dear brother Hussein has added to his already beautiful contribution by writing a non-diplomatic militant mentality, Malcolm X style, the way it should be. I like this point. I like this point. Like, definitely there is this idea that nothing's gonna phase him. He's a real soldier. He's a real soldier, by any means necessary. Exactly, Hussein. Like he is not going to give up. And here's the best part: whatever it took to get to that level, the Imam likes this from him. He likes it because he look at how he speaks about him. Even this line, "Innaka ghadabta Allah," your anger is God's anger, or you were anger for the sake of God. Imagine, imagine the maqam he's reached. Now, here's an important point. All of us, me and you, go through different emotional states. It's quite normal for us. Well, I feel anger and you feel anger and sadness. It's very normal. But to reach a level where I have changed my emotional states to align themselves with what God wants. So I'm no longer angry for myself, but angry for the sake of God. For example, Imam Ali al-Islam on the battlefield, not attacking because the enemy had spat on his face. And he stopped and said, this would not be ghadab for Allah. Then he turned and went back. So now when he strikes that man dead, that's the strike of Allah. That's not the strike of Ali ibn Abi Talib anymore. That's purely for the sake of God. And so many of the best deeds that we see in Imam Ali al-Islam show these small fragrance and fragments of signs that this wasn't the Imam acting alone. This was the Imam who had completely sold himself for God. And this is what Abu Dharr is doing. And the reason why it's good Abu Dharr is doing it is because me and you can do the same thing. Abu Dharr was not born in the family of Isma. Okay, he came from Ghaffar, which came from Rabada, which was near Medina in the time of the Holy Prophet. But he's not one of the people under the cloak of Tathir. He's not Ahl al-Bayt. He's Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, the great companion who we can learn from. And Imam has companions too. An example of a companion of the Imam is something our dear sister Kauthar has written. This reminds me of Sayyid al-Sistani and the way of life he has chosen for himself while still addressing the worldly issues we face at the highest, we face as highlighted by Brother Pajwak. There's an example. No one is going to shake or change or make Sayyid Sistani do anything. And yet, you can attract him with dunya, and the man will continue living in the house he has lived in Najaf on rent for decades. It's a sign. These are all examples, positive examples about how you gain strength by your level of detachment from attachment itself or from this dunya. Brother Muhammad has written, many companions did not take this approach and did conceal their faith. There's no issue in either approach. Both ways allow the heart to stay clean and stay steadfast in the way of Allah, definitely. So when we have people who did taqiyya at that time, that's because their life was being threatened. Abu Dharr could not be killed in that same way because everyone knew Abu Dharr as a companion. Everyone knew Abu Dharr as someone who was close to the Holy Prophet. Even Uthman couldn't actually kill him. He even sent him to Marwan bin Hakam to like, just deal with this person. I can't deal with him. You handle him. So Abu Dharr has that license to speak and speak truth. Other companions, they spoke openly and did dhikr of Imam Islam as a sign, so dhikr survives till now. For example, Maytham al-Tammar, the praise of Ali ibn Abi Talib, which was haram on the mimbar, on the pulpit, which is now happening by a man who has no fear of the authorities, is how Wilad survives. But now hold on a second. Now look at those companions who were working against Muawiyah and working for the Imam at that time, who had missions and tasks. They had to remain in taqiyya to some degree because the Imam had instructed them, you have a certain purpose to do. And taqiyya was serving that purpose. So we do have different methodologies amongst different ashab and companions. Abu Dharr is not Miqdad. Miqdad is not Ammar. And neither of them, of those three, is Salman. So they have different approaches. And each of them we can learn something from. From Abu Dharr, we learn the strength of heart. Okay, I want to move on to an idea of transaction. Before I do, is there anyone else who wanted to comment on something which you like in Abu Dharr, or which you have observed in his behavior, or any points that we mentioned? Anyone want to add anything to them?
Sorry, can I just add one more
Of
point?
course, Agha, Bismillah.
Yeah, so we have to remember Abu Zar is not standing against infidels or kuffar. The other side is also the Prophet, companion of Prophet. Muawiyah is one of the Katibin Wahy. He's one of the ones who used to write Quran. Okay, so it's we have to see that Abu Zar, in front of Abu Zar are people who are, we call them muqaddas in appearance, holy figures. Yeah, just like that ayah you just mentioned about about preachers and the big figures of Jewish people. Okay, it's the same situation, but that doesn't make Abu Zar to hesitate about himself. I mean, he sees his Imam. Everybody was seeing Imam Ali alayhi salam, but he knows his Imam.
You could
Okay,
even imagine that. You could imagine the sight of like all these ashab in front of him and trying to
yeah,
threaten him, and Abu Dharr saying this verse of Quran until Rabbani, you are like the rabbis who did this act. I'm not afraid, you know?
yeah, exactly. And it is because it's much harder, and to some extent we can actually relate it to our own time, especially in the absence of Imam Mahdi Ajalallah Ta'ala Fajr Sharif. We have, we get into a situation where people claim that they're Shias, but the but you see that even on the basic principles of what Imam Ali alayhi salam, what Prophet has said, what we see in Quran, okay, they divest. But because of the appearance, people say, "What are you saying, man? He's bigger. He's the head of the state. He's the head of the community. He's the head of community center and all
Yeah.
that." So, in that sense, I think Abu Zar is also a very good example.
Like how
That,
to take on authority, how to challenge people in power,
yeah,
you mean? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because no one is masum. Yes. So we've got to stick to the ruler that is given to us by Allah, the Prophet, and the Imams. If someone, including us, includes ourselves, yeah. If we don't measure up to something, that's it. Being a member of community, being long friends, being from same, I don't know, ethnic background or same community, doesn't matter. So I think this is another way we can look at Abu Zar. Thank you very much.
أحسنت أغا جان. تشكر عزيزي. This is a very good point. It's a very good point, and how we can learn about it ourselves. I would like to make that same point, but go one step backwards. Agha Hussein, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, if you don't mind, sorry, I just wanted to say one thing.
Habibi.
So I wanted to just add a point that I think if a companion had the choice of doing taqiyya or not doing taqiyya, they would always choose not to do taqiyya and speak the truth and speak what's in the heart if they're a true believer, because no true believer ever wants to conceal the truth, ever. But taqiyya is there for us to protect ourselves. So that's why, in my opinion, I always think speaking the truth and being non-diplomatic, having that militant mentality is the way it should always be, regardless of any situation we're in. And that taqiyya is there literally just for our protection, etc. So that's why people like Abu Dharr didn't, might have not had, performed taqiyya, and others did. So yes, there are different approaches, but I think if you put 10 companions, 5 of which performed taqiyya and the other 5 didn't do taqiyya, if you ask them all deep down, they would all tell you, no, I would never want to conceal the truth. I'll always stand and protect my religion. But in certain circumstances, it has to be done again to protect themselves and to protect Islam going forward. So I just want to put that out there.
Hussein, no, thank you for making that point. Because taqiyya is not our natural state. Dhikr of Ali ibn Abi Talib is our natural state, as Shia of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Taqiyya is an instrument. It's for protection or for a specific purpose, right? And we have companions who had to do taqiyya for certain reasons, like I mentioned. It wasn't a choice that was their personality. It was they had a purpose. For example, Ali bin Yaqtin, the companion of Imam Rida alayhi salam, Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, he was literally in the government which was oppressing Ahlul Bayt, and from within he had been given different roles and responsibilities from which he was issuing justice to help Ahlul Bayt and the followers of Ahlul Bayt to redistribute wealth from the inside. But whenever he was asked about his deen, he was not able to claim wilaya. He was being sent secret messages from the Imam. Later on, so many of the companions were in an underground wakala system under Banu Abbas for this very reason. But their natural state is Abu Dharr. It's that Husseini approach. But sometimes, if we have a purpose, it is just as brave and Husseini to be steadfast on that purpose. And if the purpose requires speaking out, I'll speak out. Purpose requires that I have to remain silent on an issue, I remain silent. The benchmark for our loyalty is how close are we to what the Imam has instructed of us. And the methodology for doing that comes second. The first thing is the actual following the Imam. How I follow, what words I use, comes after. It's a very good discussion. Brother Petrarch, did you want to respond quite immediately and then I'll move on?
Sure. Just it's not quite relevant to this subject. But I think at some point, if we can have a good definition of taqiyya, it's necessary.
It's coming. When we look at shikshiqiyya, inshallah,
okay.
we are going to dive
Yeah.
straight into this point if we have capacity. But inshallah, we'll get there. Not today, inshallah. Okay. Thank you, Brother Petrarch. Thank you, Brother Hussein. I'm glad that those perspectives were aired right now so that we have a context for who Abu Dharr is. What can we learn from him? Now, if we go back to our main aim of the affair of the heart, right? Abu Dharr has worked on his heart in such a way that he's able to detach from this dunya. At some point, Abu Dharr, just like Miqdad Ammar, just like Hur, just like all of the companions, just like Abu Fadl Abbas, had a choice. And sometimes we find ourselves in these choices where we see haqq and batil in front of us, or iman and kufr in front of us. They might manifest in random ways, different ways, we don't know, but we are faced where I know I'm choosing between right and wrong. Anni akhayyaru nafsi bain al-jannah wan nar. I'm placing myself between heaven and hell, as Horus says. Or Ya nafs min ba'd Hussein Houni, as Abu Fadl Abbas says. I'm mentioning them because I'm preparing for Muharram Majalis, so I'm thinking of these issues. But in general, sometimes me and you face choices. One choice which we are all going to face in different ways is, do we genuinely want to commit to this path of abstaining from dunya or not? Am I going to be someone who kind of does it halfway, where I'm sometimes spiritual and sometimes it's not my priority? Or am I someone who's just going to decide, like, you know what? I recognize this is Islam. I get it. It's really important, but I have other priorities. Like, am I gonna admit that? Because some people will just say it's not my priority, or am I gonna be someone who says no? I am going to pledge myself to this path. I'm going to try. I'm gonna, whatever I have in me, I'm gonna bring it together, and I'm gonna at least try to choose one over the other. This idea of having a choice, and Abu Dharr obviously represents one choice. This idea of having a choice is found continuously in Nahjal Balagha, and the same two options come up continuously. For example, in saying 133 of Nahjal Balagha, the Imam says, Ad-dunya dar min marla dar maqra. This dunya is not a dar, a place to stay. It is maqran, so it is dar maqran, it's a place of transit. وَالنَّاسَ فِيهَا رَجْلَانِ. And so the people in this place of transit are of two types. رجل باغ فيها نفسه فوبقها. The first type is the one who has following their nafs. They've sold his self already. They've sold their nafs. باغ فيها. It's been sold and offered in sale. فوبقها. And so they are sold. They've given themselves up. ورجل أبتع نفسه فاعتقها. The next one has purchased from his soul. from his nafs, meaning he's taken his soul away from dunya. And he is the one who has become free. He has hur, ahrar. So the first person sells himself to dunya. The second person buys himself from dunya. Okay, think of that distinction. In saying 269 of Nahjal Balagha, the Imam again says that الناس في دنيا عملان. The doers of this world, the workers, amalan, the ones who do amal, are of two types. The first type is وَعَامِلْ عَمَلًا فِي دُنْيَا. They are amil of amal of dunya. They are doer of actions for the sake of dunya. So whatever they do is for this world. Laysa ba'd, not what comes after. So these people, the Imam says, is they live for this world, they work for this world, and they keep busy in this world. وَمِنْ خَلِّفِكَ فَقْرِ, and they are scared of being poor or being destitute. They work because they don't want to be poor. For this person, the Imam says, they spend their life and they do things for others, but it stops there. Okay. Then the second type, the Imam says, so the first is amal fi dunya ad-dunya. The second is amal fi dunya lima ba'daha. This person does amal in this world for the sake of something which comes after, meaning the hereafter. So now this person, Imam says, they have secured whatever work they do in this world with the hereafter as what they're trying to attain. This means they have no effort, he says. I'll come to what that might mean later. Therefore, the person here gets amalan, they get both benefits. They get this dunya because they get what they need from here, and they get akhirah. In fact, the phrase he uses is fasbu jami'a wa malik ad-darina jami'an. He becomes the malik of the two dar, the two places together. Dar ad-dunya wa darul akhirah. He gets both. He literally has his cake and eats it. Not literally, but like literally. In this way, عند الله ووجيها عند الله. We just read dua tawassul. This person becomes illustrious in the sight of Allah. وجيها عند الله. لا يسأل الله حاجة في منع. And Allah will not deny him anything. The first person, their mentality is the dunya. So all their actions are for this dunya. That might mean they might work with people, help people. That's fine. But they will not go further. The second person's amal is for something which comes after. For example, I want to go to heaven, or I want God, or something more than this dunya. That person does not go through effort, Imam says. Why? Because if everything you do is for akhirah, then you don't hold yourself accountable by the rules of dunya. If you have another purpose, you judge yourself by that purpose. If I'm in pain now for no reason whatsoever, maybe you'll hear me complain. A mother who is going through childbirth for her child, she might say the pain is bad. She might say the pain hurts a lot. But if she's had that child healthily and she's happy to have the child and grateful and everything, and she's not got any further issues, she might say it was painful, but she will not regret the pain once she's holding the child. If me and you are going through something hard, while we're going through it, we might complain. If it's for something else, we won't just stop. It doesn't become effort, it becomes an investment. The time I'm going through to work on this project is an investment for something else. So it's not effort for itself. It's ghaya. My aim is something which is ba'ad the dunya, it's after this dunya. Now, if we apply this mentality to all our actions, we have no space left to regret when we lose something from this dunya, because that was never our aim. I was never meant to be here. I'm not even from here. I came from somewhere before and I'm going somewhere after. And I'm here, Dar al-Maqra. This is a place of just transit for me. So if in transit I go one forward back or one step backwards in the language of this world, it's not gain or loss. But if I'm using this dunya for something akhirah, and Imam says, send your provisions forwards and then follow them, then that sounds like a genuine decision that I have made. Now, through these narrations, if you combine them, we have two different groups of people. And if you're making a choice, you have in front of you, my dear brothers and sisters, two choices. Either I'm going to be someone who is going to live for this dunya, for the sake of this dunya, and submit myself to my passions, to my desires, to my shahawat. If I do that, if I choose that, then I've sold myself to dunya and, according to the first narration, to my passions, to my shahwat. Or I can decide that my mentality is for akhirah. That's the way I'm thinking. And the moment I think like that, I'm still selling myself because I'm still offering something, but I've chosen to choose a different buyer. I'm no longer choosing the salesman of this dunya. I'm no longer choosing the one who sells money or fame or attention or the instant gratification of pleasure. I haven't chosen them as the recipient of myself. I've chosen Allah. And the moment I've made that decision, I have offered myself to God. Now, Allah can accept, Allah can ask for more, Allah can put us through different tests to test if we're worth it, what our value is, but He's the one who's purchasing us. There's a verse in the Quran, I don't remember the verse, in which we say that the believer is the one who sells themselves for the sake of Allah. If anyone has that reference, you can definitely add it to this group. But this is the Quranic content, and the Imam is saying the same thing. So here I'll pause again, and I'll put this to all of you, inshallah. Um, when you're facing a difficult decision, do you think that this is easy, or what problems do you think can get in the way of making a choice this simple? I'm choosing dunya or akhirah. If it's not that simple, because we would have all done it, why don't people do this? In your opinion, if you reflect on how we are, how your culture is, maybe on how you are, Imam is telling us people are of these two types. Why do most people not choose this path? What gets in the way, do you think? Oh, that's the verse. Thank you, Sister Zahra. Have you got the reference as well? ابتغاء مرضات الله والله والله رؤوف بالعباد. Yes, Surah Baqarah verse 208. There's a man who is willing to sell even his soul to win the favor of Allah, and Allah is compassionate to his creatures. Ahsanti. Thank you so much, Sister Zahra. This verse is actually used as a proof of Imam Ali alayhi salam, as the one who was in the state of ruku', willing to sell himself for Allah. It's one of the proofs of his walaya. But thank you. Some people will sell themselves to God, and they, because abd means slave or servant. So I'm accepting my role and submitting myself to God. And Allah says, if you submit yourself to me, look at what you get in return. So back to the question. Thank you so much, Sister Zahra. Why do you think people don't choose to sell themselves to God? What gets in the way, do we think? 207. Thank you, Sister Zahra. Anyone want to, this is like in your observation, why don't people want this path? Why are people not choosing God when these choices come at them, do we think? Aghai Pajwak has written love of worldly matters. Okay, so they've chosen dunya. They've chosen this world because maybe it's more attractive to them. Yeah, true. Thank you for sharing, inshallah. Distrust in Allah. Okay, so that's more. So a lack of taqwa, submitting to Allah for whatever reason, but they don't have that. They don't have that motivation. I get that too. Sometimes we don't have motivation. It's hard. So thank you for sharing that point, inshallah. Misunderstanding of Allah's promises. Ah, okay, interesting. So maybe it is, Allah sadiqun wa'ad Allah. It is that they don't believe in the truthfulness of God's promises or the promise of pleasure and happiness. Is that what you mean, Brother Pajwak?
Sorry. So I think to some extent it can be the way we are taught about Islam, especially in this day and age, that being a pious person, being a Mormon, means complete detachment from any worthy activity, any worthy achievement. Okay, even not having, I've seen this unfortunately, even not having self-respect, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, and and the media and the atmosphere doesn't really help.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because you see a lot of movies, and I've seen this myself, that always the righteous person is that miserable poor person from the start to the end.
Yeah.
Okay, and that affects our mindset, where Allah says And we actually in our Qunut, for example, what do we say? We say ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة.
Mm-hmm.
We want the goodness of both worlds, not just thereafter. So if you're asking for the goodness of this dunya, it means that it doesn't, it's not in conflict with the achievement of the thereafter. I think if we can basically settle this for ourselves
Yeah.
and trust in Allah, because at the end of the day, we know if doing something is wrong. Okay, if saying a lie, for example, is wrong, if mis-selling a good is wrong, we know it. Okay, it's not oh I had doubts and stuff. No, but it's how how much you have perseverance on your what we call it ahd or promise with Allah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this has not been worked on really well. That if basically if we go forward towards Allah, Allah won't leave us alone. He will catch us out when in those desperate moments. So that's my point, my view.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Agha Pejwak. Thank you. Oh, Hussein, anything you wanted to add, brother?
I just wanted to ask a question. The brother just mentioned that dua, ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة. I wanted to know if you knew much about the tafsir of that. I know it's probably off topic, but I was just wondering, like, because I heard someone say that the hasana is basically Imam Ali or something like that. I don't know. I don't even know if that's true or not. I know nothing about it. I just thought if you can. I don't know if you can quickly clarify. If you know, if you don't, then it's fine. But that basically, ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة. So in this world, the close companion of Imam, sorry, the close relationship with Imam Ali and the Ahl Bayt,
Mm.
i.e., that's the hasana, and in the akhirah also the hasana of being close to them, or that, I don't know. Just thought if you can clarify.
Yes, I've actually
Thank
heard
you.
the same interpretation that Hasana here means wilayat of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So may Allah have this, give me this wilayat in this dunya and akhirah. But I've not read it. I've heard it, but not read it. So allow me to see if there's a reference or in which tafsir it's present, so I can look into it. But Ali is mentioned as Hasana in other verses too. Doesn't mean he's mentioned every time the words comes up, but he is mentioned as a Hasana. In Ahsan Allah, this is a thing liked by Allah when describing the amal of Imam Ali alayhi salam in one of the battles. So this is normal. About this
Okay.
verse, let me find the reference. If you know which tafsir, I can search it for you next week. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's fine. I can have a look as well. I just thought if you know, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, by all
I'd,
means,
I'd
then
be
go
curious.
for
I'd
it.
be curious to know.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to know what the Sha'n Nuzul is, so what the occasion of the revelation is, and see how we can link it to that. But
yeah, sure.
definitely, it describes something about wilaya. Definitely.
Ahsan, thank you.
Hassan Habib Hussein. There's been a few comments as well about this idea of why people don't choose Allah when the option is there. So let me go through some of the answers. Sister Kauthar has said maybe they are not aware of the benefits of giving up this dunya for the akhirah, the increased appeal of the immediate worldly gain as opposed to the delayed benefit of the akhirah. So true, so true. And especially in our culture of instant gratification, where if you want something, you just go and get it immediately, and once you've had it, it's done, and you move on. This is the great this is the point. Iman is not like that. Faith is not like that. Part of it is essentially delayed, where Imam says, um, yeah, like the provisions which you are sending, you have sent them fawqahum. They've already been sent ahead of you. So it necessarily implies something going forward. Or for example, inna awalakum intadhar akhirakum. Those who are first are waiting for you. There's the idea of waiting until you get your reward. Or for example, the ultimate height of liqa Allah happening later. Like the idea of not getting it immediately is present. And maybe in human nature, we want it now. We want it now. We want it now. But as all of us has also seen human nature, when we get something delayed, sometimes its benefit is much greater. Look at Shahr Ramadan. Look at how amazing your iftar tastes after a whole day of waiting. But then look at how quickly you're full and you don't want any more food. That's dunya. But when the rizq is unlimited, waiting for it is worth it, because it is a ra'an rawiya, is a kind of um a kind of pleasure which continues and sustains and continues. But you're right, it's a mentality thing. It's a mentality, and that's why it's a choice. You have to actually choose this and choose to not indulge in certain desires now for the sake of Allah. And it is a choice. And you've mentioned a reason why it might be hard. Thank you, Sister Kawthar. Sister Zahra has added a point. Kawthar, if you want to add anything, please do in the chat. I will look at it, inshallah, and we will, we'll read it. Zahra has written, I think that we do choose it and would like to choose it when asked, but it's because it's not deeply enough embedded in our conscience and our heart. When it comes to making the everyday decisions, when it comes to the fork in the road between two possible paths. So, for example, the path of least resistance, like dunya. Exactly. Um, yeah, it's not deep. It's not deep enough to actually affect our real life decisions. Like in talking, it's fine. Imam Ali said this is amazing. Quran says it's okay. But when it comes to what uni am I choosing, what subject am I choosing, am I going to answer this message? Am I going to talk to that person? I don't link these things together. I compartmentalize in my mind, and they belong in separate places. Islam is not like that. In Islam, everything is accountable. You know, every atom's weight will taste its value. So it's not the case that this decision over here is not connected. No, my dear brothers and sisters, me and you are going through decisions every day which are linked to this exact point about choosing God. It keeps coming up. We might not recognize this is about Allah, but if we think deeply on my choices, especially when you're choosing something, really think of these two options. Which one is for Allah? Which one is against Allah? Which one is wajib? Which one is mustahab? You can use fiqh, but also use akhlaq, use your ethics, use your heart. For example, in one narration, Imam Ali says that one of the signs of the believers, oh, this is a spoiler for next week, but I'll mention it anyway, is that when they're choosing between two things and their heart wants something more, they don't do that thing in order to resist. So that's a choice. And this is all things. So there are some stories of ulama, for example, who anytime they found themselves liking a certain dish of food, they would refrain from that in order to build that detachment from it to then gain something in return. And what they gained was that spiritual maqam. They would not sleep very comfortably, knowing they could. And by choosing that, by not, sleeping on, for example, on a hard, simple surface, for example, by making that choice, practically, they would then receive some benefits in their relation with Allah. Like they applied it to their literal everyday choices. Sometimes I've heard stories of some Arafah, some mystics who would stop by every moment and evaluate their nafs for every single decision, every minor thing. We have this narrative from Sayyid Hashim Haddad, one of the Arafah. I think it's one of his teachers who did this. And every moment became a new imtihan for him. So you're right. We've got to find a way to make this stuff relevant and practical, because without it, Islam will just be an ideology and it won't be practical. And that's what we're wishing. But Muhammad has mentioned, there's a narration which says that a love of this dunya engenders greed, and piety and greed cannot come together in the same heart. There's a narration of the Holy Prophet where hubbu dunya, hubbullah, I think it's laysa mawjood fi qalbun wahid, or they cannot exist in one heart. I don't remember their wording, but it is this idea that love of Allah and love of dunya cannot exist in the same heart. You can't have both. You can have a little bit of this and that, like just you know, um, impressions of them, faint impressions, but not the real thing. You can't be a genuine ashiq of Allah and be in love with Allah. In the same way, you can't be in love with one person and another person at the same time. You can be in love with one person where they consume your heart, but not to love. They can be lust and attraction for them, but not love. And love of Allah, the one who is Habibi Qulub al-Mu'mineen, is like this. When you pledge yourself for God, that is a very intimate type of love between you and the one who is aqrabu min hablil warid. Where is the space between you and your jugular vein to fit love of dunya in? So that is a good point, dear brother. Your point, not mine. I was just doing your tafsir, bro. Um, Sister Ali has mentioned, I've also heard this is linked with mentality about how you view and implement Islam in your life. So whether it's a lifestyle choice for you or whether it's something that you have inherited from your parents. Such a good point, Sister Alia. Really good point. Because sometimes your family or your environment might already be doing something which is a love of dunya kind of action, or the action which implies desires are more important. And you might find examples in your own culture where religion is just not that important, and where it does actually conflict with your spiritual path. What do you do then? You have to choose. Either I'm choosing to follow a culture or a specific action in the culture that I know is not causing me benefit to my heart. I know it because I can see how it conflicts. But maybe I'm doing it because a path of least resistance, like Sister Carter says, or because my parents have asked me or something. But I know it's gonna harm my heart. I can see, I can feel my nafs enjoying it more than my love for Allah can bear. But I've chosen it, and sometimes, and there are some really hard choices we have in our lives, we have to go against our family for the sake of Allah. We have examples where parents and brothers and sisters are for Allah, and somewhere they're against Allah, and we don't choose what families we are born into. There's one a hadith from Imam alayhi salam, oh, I don't have it with me, where he says, "Ad-dunya ummuhu," or the dunya is like your mother. So you cannot blame people for wanting to love it because you're from there. Uses the word actually, like it's literally your mother. I get that. I get that because we are from this dunya. We're from here. So our whole instinct is to just live for it, and we see so much pleasure and just live for that. And if it's my culture, I was born in it. It's my home. I grew up in this family. This is my environment. God sent me to. But no, it's a choice that you have to go further, to go more than what you're just inherited from, more than your arath, your inheritance. You have to look for your purpose, for your calling, inshallah. And that is found in Allah. Great point, Sister Alia. Sister Kauthar has mentioned it's not enough to simply decide that you will choose the akhirah. You have to actively keep making the choice every day. That's responding to my point. You're right. It's an active choice. You have to choose God every day. Every Salat al-Fajr, you choose Him when you wake up. It should not be a routine. That's why it's hard, because you have to choose it. And you are, because of the majority view in our school of Usul al-Fiqh, you are only rewarded for those decisions. Sorry, a deed becomes good partially based on your knowledge that it was good. So if you do something which is wrong, but you didn't know it's wrong, you don't get a sin for it. Although Allah is so merciful, if you do a good deed without knowing it's a good deed, Allah still gives you the rewards for it, which is one of the signs of rahmah of God. But in general, you need to choose it for it to become upon you. In the same way, you need to know something is wajib or haram, that when you do it with the intention of wajib. When you refrain from it, the intention that this is haram on me. You know that it's haram. If you didn't know it was alcohol when you drank it, or you didn't know the rulings of alcohol at all, right? You are not the same as the one who knows it's forbidden and still wants to drink it. You are not the same, even though the amal is the same. So you're right, sister. You have to choose it. And everyone's choice is different because we all face our own resistances in our own ways. Um, so we judge each other based on our own journeys, not on one another. That's what I was trying to conclude. Sister Alia has mentioned Pajwak, you have to leave. Okay, Brother Pajwak, if you have left already, if you have not left, I don't know, but check on the WhatsApp group for the next sermon, okay?
Yes, sure. Thanks very much. See you later, inshallah. Thank
Khuda
you.
Hafiz Agha, take care, inshallah. So Ali said, if you actually have thought about how you practice Islam and why you practice, adding to your point above, yeah, I get it, I get it. Yeah, you have to like deconstruct your faith sometimes in order to build it back up again. And deconstructing it might mean deconstructing cultural or dunyawi reasons for why you are the way you are, or you do the way that you do things. I want to make a point here that's really important, and I mean this for everyone, which is um, when you're making this choice of whether do I want Allah or not want Allah, it's not always this simple. Sometimes it's hard, and we go through struggles, and we can't always tell what is the right or wrong thing to do. I get that, and part of it's because this dunya is a really hard place to navigate how to live here. Part of it is also because of other people, because there's a direct link between me and God. But sometimes I allow other people to become involved in my relationship with Allah. For example, someone mentioned family, for example, but other examples might include friends. That are these friends taking me closer to God or away from God? Okay. Other examples might just be people telling me or judging me or making me feel good or bad about religion. Either they're praising me so much for the deeds they think I'm doing, and they're rewarding me, and they're doing, making me feel like I am some great scholar, or just that I'm really religious when I do like one thing that they know about. They don't know my sins, right? They don't know. If they knew my sins, they wouldn't say these things. Or someone has seen a bad deed or a sin, maybe, for example, that they think you've done, and they now see you as the sin. They judge you. They judge you as the very thing which you're trying to not do, which is hard for you to stop. And I see this film with girls who don't wear hijab, that people look at them and they say to them that you are now an embodiment of, you know, the lack of haya in society and all these things, when really it's just a sister who's trying to understand the wisdom behind an action of God and trying to mean it. And it's a process, right? But they are judged in a certain way because it's a very visual sign of not doing something in the Sharia. But many things are like prayer. You know, people, if you don't pray a certain prayer, or you've not woken up for Fajr, or you didn't, everyone's gone to pray and you didn't go, okay, you should pray, but you are not an embodiment of kufr. You are not no longer a Muslim. You're just a Muslim who's struggling to do the right thing. One thing which gets in the way of our problem of choosing the right thing is sometimes we believe and internalize what others say that we are. So either they praise or they debase us or they label us or categorize us or whatever. But the problem is I'm now looking to them for my value. I'm no longer looking to Allah. And Ali speaks about this. He says in Sermon 32 about this topic, لبيس المتجران ترى الدنيا نفسك ثمنا وما ما لك عند الله عوضا. What a bad trade it is for the tajar, for the trader, who exchanges his self. ترى دنيا أنفسك ثمنا وما ما لك عند الله. They give themselves instead of trading for what they should give to Allah, but they trade it to dunya. What a bad trader is the one who chooses dunya over Allah. Okay? Now, the one who chooses Allah, the word uses anfusaka, themselves, meaning they have now chosen that I have looked at myself in the mirror and I've seen it is the value of dunya, because you only sell something according to its monetary value. So I've looked at everything that I am in my eyes and I've seen it's worthy of this dunya, even though the Imam says you are worth, you have the value of Jannah, but you just didn't see what you were. You didn't see yourself, you didn't recognize yourself. If you had seen what you actually are, what you are capable of, what your origin is, where you are from, you would never do those deeds. You would never do those sins, because you know you are, those things are so much lower than you. Dunya literally means low, come from daniya. If you knew what you are and the izzah which belongs to you, you wouldn't wish for anything except Allah and the highest level of quality of life, of this life and akhirah. But the problem is that we have become bad traders, and a bad trader is bad because not only does he not know who is selling what, he doesn't know the thing that he is selling. And I believe to all of you that if we looked at ourselves as having the potential to be Abu Dharr, as that potential in us, we would not settle for not at least trying. We wouldn't just give up and not try when these choices come. We would at least give it a go, because this dunya, you will never be seen by this world. In fact, we have in another part of Nahjal Balagha, the Imam says, أكرم نفسك من كل دنيا أوكي أكرم نفسك من كل دنية وأن ساقتك إلى الرع يعني. So the best way of restraining your nafs is from every low thing, daniyatan, everything which is low, stop yourself from doing it. And don't follow this dunya because it might appear appealing. فإنك لن تعتاض بما تحدل من نفسك عوضا. Because in this exchange which you are about to do, you will not receive the correct value of yourself. You will not sell yourself because you will not get the right value. Why? Because you're selling to someone who doesn't understand you. Imam is saying this. So he says, don't allow yourself to be a slave. ولا كن عبد غيرك وقد جعلك الله حرا. So don't see yourselves as selling yourself for anything less, because Allah has made you free. He's made you free to choose to follow him, to choose to want the highest things possible. But the problem is that we value ourselves by a measure which doesn't even see us for who we are. That's this dunya. The last point on this that I wanted to leave to all of you is the idea of leaving behind a legacy, because what we choose when these decisions come to us define who we are. And the Imam says that prepare yourself for departure, because be ready and send yourself off to your real destination, meaning that we're going to leave behind something and take with us something. So part of this choice me and you face is, what do I want to take with me and what do I want to leave behind? If we do things for akhirah, we take our good deeds with us to God and we have offered something to him, and that's part of our value, our actions we have done. That's our real value, our knowledge and our actions. But if I choose this world, the moment I die, all those things are being left behind in my grave, and when my soul, or literally in the ground, and then I'm elevating and I'm going towards Allah. The Imam says that there are some people who gather fruits in this world, um, and they utilize them to the best of their abilities, and at the same time they stay away from all that is evil in this world. And by living contented, they were more respectable and happier than those who lived wickedly. So there is happiness to be had in this world if we gather the fruits here. But then he says, when a man dies, إن المرأة إذا حالك قال الناس ما ترك. When he dies, people ask, what has he left behind? What is his legacy? And I ask all of you, what is your legacy? وقالت الملائكة, and the angels say, ما قدم. What did he put forward? That's his legacy. What actions did he give to Allah? We will see his value and his legacy based on that. قال الملائكة, that's the angel speaking. Allahu aba'akum. Allah, may Allah have mercy on them, the Imam says, and he says, فَقَدَّمُوا بَعْدًا يَكُنْ لَكُمْ قَرْضًا. So send forward something which is of great value. For example, good deeds, charity, speaking the truth, all of the good stuff. This is your legacy that all of us are going to leave behind. I will end this point by asking all of you a final question, which is that, when Abu Dharr died, what legacy did he leave? And what legacy would you like to leave? So let me first tell you how he died. Abu Dharr was exiled. He carried all of these decisions with him, and it left him with no wealth or money, and no family, actually. He was alone with his daughter in the end. So they had no food, and they left into the wilderness of Rabada, a town, and they were roaming through the wilderness looking for food. They found nothing. He lay there. He was starving. He was close to death. Nothing. Abu Dharr, lying on alone, withering away from hunger and thirst. So his daughter comes and says to him, even if you die here, I have no way of even burying you. That's how poor we are. So he says, just go to the side of the road, and whoever's passing, say, have you heard of Rasulullah? Do you know Abu Dhar? Yes. Come and bury him, please. Someone will know me. I'm Abu Dhar. She goes out to the road, and she just calls, and she's like, is anyone there? A caravan of 14 people is traveling from Iraq going to Medina. So she stops them and says, Assalamu alaikum, have you heard of Abu Dhar? In that group is Malik al-Ashtar, Hujr bin Adi. This is by coincidence. Sa'sa bin Suhan, Ibn Qais. They're all, of the group of 14 people, 4 or 5 of them are lovers of Ali ibn Abi Talib and companions. At least the ones who are named. And they says, Abu Dhar, here. So they got off their horses and they went and they saw the body of the greatest companion from amongst them lying there. So Malik al-Ashtar purchased a kafan and he buried him in that spot there. That's the legacy which was left behind by Abu Dhar. Nothing dunyawi, nothing. By chance, he was seen by lovers of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and he's buried there and then. But his whole legacy is innaka ghadabta Allah. You are one who has anger for the sake of God. If we judge him from the eyes of dunya, Abu Dhar left with nothing. But if we judge him from the eyes of Ali, Abu Dhar left with something which the Imam says, you will see tomorrow who is more envious, you or all of them. Yani anta, you are the one who has all of the value. And that's how he died. So we have a few minutes, but let me ask you very quickly to all of you, what would you like your legacy to be? Is there any amal or action which you think you would like to be known for when you die? Either you can share with the group or just think about it, inshallah. Is there anyone who think about that immediately, has like a thought that this is already on my mind, that was on your mind, that, I wish to leave with this if I can, inshallah? I would understand if it is a bit too personal, you don't want to share, but at least think about it. Please think about this point, that in the journey of the self and in my moral decision making, whatever actions I take now, whatever decision I do now will affect my entire legacy. So what do I want to choose? And inshallah, we choose the right thing. But I would also ask all of you in your own time just to think about what you would like to be known for after you die. Inshallah. Okay. Tomorrow or next week, not tomorrow, next week. My life begins and ends with book clubs. Next week, we are continuing in looking at the idea of self-development, focusing on what it means to be a successful person. Imam Ali has this saying, it is one of my favorites of all time. Saying 189 of Nahjal Balagha, 189. Please read it. Sister Zahra, I read what you're saying. Inshallah, you can definitely think about and ponder on it. 189 begins with Imam Ali saying, in the past, I had a brother in faith. This is such a beautiful saying. He goes through a companion, someone who he doesn't name, and he lists how this person was. And in reading it, you see what a successful person looks like. And in that saying of 189 of Nahjal Balagha, we see a number of great qualities of a successful person. And some of them include how we should treat dunya and akhirah. So what I'll do is I'll put the message on the group, inshallah, for those of you who, so you can access it. But if you have your own copy, in the past, I once had a brother in faith is how it begins in most copies. Inshallah, read that, and I will see you all next week as we continue going through Nahjal Balagha and moral decision making. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. Fi amanillah. Thank you for today's session. Thank you, sister and brothers. Inshallah, you are well. Take care of yourselves, and good luck to all of you in your journeys, inshallah.
علي ولي الله علي ولي الله علي ولي الله